This is Annie Fox for Family Confidential, Secrets of Successful Parenting. My guest today is Keith Zafren, founder of the Great Dads Project and author of How to Be a Great Dad, no matter what kind of father you had. Hi, Keith. Welcome to Family Confidential.
Thank you, Annie. I'm really glad to be here with you.
And I'm happy you made the time. I've really enjoyed your book, How to Be a Great Dad. And you were talking to someone who suffered from father hunger for a long time. And so maybe that's why we connected on Twitter, at least why the topic of your book was so interesting to me. My dad died suddenly of a massive heart attack when I was 15. And there was a lot of residual stuff to work through. So I could really relate to what you were saying, though, different causes, but that hunger is a real thing. So I wanted to ask you, you alluded to it in the book, and I figured as much, that no one would write a book like this unless they had been on a journey and had done some significant healing for you to be in a place where you could help other people. So I wonder if you could share with our listeners what it was like growing up for you with the dad that you had.
Yeah, my dad was around to some degree. I didn't know him very well as a young child. I have to go back in my memory to figure out what happened, talk to my mom, talk to others. I know that my dad left our family when I was 7 and would show up every 3 or 4 weeks or so. We'd have a fun weekend together. He'd drop us off and then I wouldn't hear from him again. There was no contact usually in between visits. And it was a strained relationship. My dad had a hard time being a dad. I think he had a hard time with any kind of responsibility in life, whether it was work-related, relationship, or family. And it was just tough for about 7 years. It was a difficult time trying to connect with him, needing, wanting, longing for more from him, but not getting it. Until I was about 14 years old. I went away to a tennis camp, a non-religious tennis camp, but my counselor was a Christian and I had never heard the Christian story before. And at that camp, I made a decision to follow the teachings of Jesus. And I came back and told my dad, who was by culture Jewish, but by belief system atheist. And he did not react well, let's say. And he took it personally. He had no idea how a child of his could believe something so stupid, he said. And there was a lot of rejection and even more distance than there had been in the past. And for about 2 years, that was the case until my brother died, my younger brother. I was 16, he was 13. And my dad really descended into some depression and very upset with me. He assumed that because of my new belief system that I would believe that Kenny, my brother, was in heaven, which I didn't believe, but my dad and I never talked about it. So my dad thought I wasn't grieving and actually resented me. So there's lots of rejection. The story could go on, but many more years of rejection until finally when I was 38 years old, after going through a long healing journey myself, I asked my dad, I begged him really to be more of a dad to me. And he told me he didn't want that. And walked out of my life, and I never heard from him again. He died a couple of years later, and the last words I ever heard from my dad were, I don't want to be your dad. So a lot of healing that I needed to go through for myself, but also to become the dad that I wanted to be for my children.
Well, this is, I'm very sorry that you went through all this, and I see this in emails that I get from kids, boys and girls, daily, that there's a dad missing. And even when they don't say it, the kind of feelings they have about themselves and the kind of high-risk behaviors that they engage in, I'm always thinking, is there a dad in the picture here? Because it is what has come to make sense to me is that without a dad in the picture, these things are more likely to occur. And when I read in the beginning of your book about the startling statistics about high school dropout and substance abuse use and horrific things, I thought, wow, incarceration. It's not hard to connect the dots about the importance of the role of dads. And you have really, your Great Dads Project. I want to talk about that in a minute, but first I want to talk about the title of your book, because I am a writer
Yeah,
myself and I know words
I know.
matter. And so when you say how to be a great dad, my first thought is you have to define this for me. If you're going to set up a book saying, okay, I'm going to show you how to do something, I, as a
Mhm.
reader, want to know, what is it you're going after? What does it mean for you as a writer
Yeah.
and as a dad and as a mentor to other dads? What does it mean to be a great dad? Can you define it for me?
I think it means to give as much as you can to your children, and particularly meet the needs that they have, to be present and engaged in their lives. And I try to break that down through my own experience, through my reading, through my research, boiling down what I know of child development, particularly for younger children growing into their teen years. I boil it down to, as you've seen in the book, affirmation, acceptance, and affection. And I think if I can help dads learn how to positively affirm their children, building in them a sense of self-esteem and identity, if I can help them demonstrate unconditional and unending acceptance, and that there's a place that kids belong. So many of the teenagers, I think, that you write to daily, just don't feel like they belong in their
Right,
families.
right.
And so they go out searching, where do I belong? In the arms of another man, in a group, in a gang. Um, but if dads can express that kind of acceptance, that I accept you no matter what, kids know they belong. And then lastly, affection, speaking words and demonstrating physically affection. So
So
I think being a great dad means primarily those three things.
that's a wonderful and really clear definition. So I'm going to play devil's advocate for a minute here. I know that even without an absent dad, or
Yeah,
worst case, an abusive dad,
yeah,
a lot of guys in our culture find it difficult to show affection more to their
absolutely.
sons maybe than to their daughters. I actually had an email exchange with a young man 6 months ago. His mom had just died after a long illness. And
Mm,
at the funeral, his father said, "Suck it up, man. Real men don't cry. Suck it up, son."
right.
And this idea of, I'm sure the dad was well meaning, and yet
Maybe.
maybe, but he totally missed the mark. And so I guess my question to you, Keith, is that,
Yeah,
given the culture and the macho framework that many guys define themselves within,
yeah.
how is it that men who become dads can show that softer side, can give their
Hmm.
kids, as you say, what they need?
Yeah. Fantastic question. And honestly, that's what my work and my book is all about. You've mentioned the first part of the title, How to Be a Great Dad. The subtitle, which is probably the most important, is No Matter What Kind of Father You Had. And it's my story. I had to learn how to be appropriately affectionate with my boys. I have three sons, all teenagers now. Absolutely adore them and have been affectionate with them ever since I learned how to do it when they were young. Had to force myself to do that because I didn't have a dad. I didn't know what that was like. And in our culture, male showing male's affection is sometimes a difficult thing.
Yeah.
And as you mentioned, the macho culture. And so thankfully, it's something I've learned, it's something I've demonstrated. I think from my book, I had the incredible good fortune of working in prisons for 6 years with
Yeah.
inmates, incarcerated men, and learning to help those guys become physically expressive. You should see guys in prison for gang related violence, drug related murder. These guys are hugging each other, hugging me, crying in my arms as they tell me their dad stories. Just beautiful stuff. Guys can get by this. Most of us want to, but we don't know how and we've not been shown. And thankfully, Annie, honestly, I'm a big guy. I played football and rugby in college. I won a national championship playing rugby. I still work out. I'm 6'2", 210 pounds. I'm not a small guy. And so when I work with men, I have the good fortune of standing in front of them and appearing kind of you might say a man's a man, so to speak.
Right.
So when I talk about how affectionate I am with my children, and when I'm affectionate even with the guys that I work with, it breaks down barriers and it starts opening up wounds, because so many of us guys who have trouble showing affection, it's because we didn't receive that from our dads.
Right. And then
Um,
maybe somehow we survive by thinking or saying to ourselves, I don't need that.
yeah.
That's not what real men do. And
Well, yeah.
it's a lie.
Yeah, it is a lie because I tell myself that lie because if I say I don't need that, then supposedly it doesn't hurt that I didn't get it. One of the men I'm coaching right now, I work with men individually and in small groups, coaching them how to be great dads. And one of the guys, we're working on this very thing, and he's beginning to cry on our Skype sessions when I talk with him, just because I'm being verbally affectionate and affirming him as a man. And he told me a couple of weeks ago, he said, my dad never told me he loved me and never hugged me.
Yeah, you can't grow up that way. I mean, we're human
No.
beings. We have human hearts, and whether you're male or female, we need this. I wanted to talk to you a little bit because this touches on something that I do. I do parent coaching myself, and I find
Mm,
that single dads
mhm.
who don't necessarily have a great shared custody agreement with
Yeah,
their ex-spouse often feel alienated from their kids, and sometimes
yeah,
the ex-spouse plays up on that and demonizes dad in the eyes of the kids, and there's all kinds of
yeah,
messes that happen as a result of that. What can dads who are divorced dads do to
yeah.
make sure that they stay connected with their kids?
Yeah, fantastic question. Thank you.
Am I getting
Um,
points for these fantastic
they
questions?
really are good. I'm coaching a couple of divorced dads, and I don't know if you know, Annie, that I'm a fairly recently divorced dad
I
myself.
did not know that.
So I am in that situation where I long to spend more time with my kids. I love my boys, they love me. I've had years and years and years of building in their life, thankfully, but it's never enough time. So we stay connected by calling each other, texting each other regularly.
Mhm.
We all look forward to our times together. In between, I'm always talking to them about what we're going to do next and when we're going to do it. So there's that always that looking forward to, that anticipation, and then making the most of the time when we're there. I was with my boys a few weeks ago, and I had them made them dinner. We were sitting around the dinner table, and I brought this very topic up, and I said, it's hard for me now that we don't get as much time together as we used to, and I want you to know how hard that is for me. I miss you guys so much when I'm with you, and it's good for them to hear that. And my youngest, who is going to 12, turning 13, my youngest said, Dad, it's really okay because when you were around more, you were working a lot and you were there, and but now when we're with you, you totally focus on us. You give us so much attention and time, and he said, this is great. I don't know that I'd change this.
That's really interesting. Great
Yeah,
observation. Now,
I know, from a 12-year-old. And I
yeah.
thought, okay, this is not an ideal situation, but I'm trying to make the best of it.
Yeah, and he's aware of what a focused parent feels like to be around,
Hmm.
So and he's
Exactly.
contrasting that. So that's really cool. And now you've just brought up something else that I'm thinking about for divorced dads.
Yeah,
The planning, letting kids know this is what we're going to be doing the next time we're together.
yeah,
Several of the dads that I've coached have talked about the need almost to be an activities director, so that
right.
if you've got, one weekend every other weekend or one weekend
Yeah,
every fourth weekend or something, you want to plan something. And then you kind of become the dad who is providing all these really super things to do. But I wonder, I mean, first of all, how do you keep that up? And with your
yeah,
kids' expectation, well, what are you going to do this time? We went to
yeah,
Disneyland. What's next week? And you can't
yeah.
repeat. But the other part is the normal kind of calm hanging out time. I
Right.
mean, is that something that divorced dads also need to schedule in, and it's so that it's not always this, great spectacular adventure time. We're going to this theme park, et cetera. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there are a lot of pieces to that. I've read about that. I've been warned against that by other divorced dads myself.
Hmm.
And I'm not when I say I talking to them about what we're going to do. I'm actually not planning big things. There are
Okay.
some big things that we do occasionally, but it's really just, hey, we're going to get together, we're going to play golf, or we're going to watch Agents of Shield. They're with me every Tuesday night, and that's a show they're really into. So
Uh-huh.
this evening, I'll pick them up. I'll make them dinner. we'll hang out, we'll play some ping pong, and we'll watch Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. That's our night together.
Great.
But we're talking about it. We talk about it ahead of time. I was traveling the last week and a half. So while I was away, we're talking on the phone, we're texting. I watched Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. while I was away so I could stay up on the episode with them.
Good. That's
You
very
know,
smart.
so that kind of thing. So it's not big adventures. And again, one of the reasons I think many of us dads plan the big adventures is because A, we feel guilty for not being there, and it's a way of assuaging our own guilt. And B, we don't know what to do during the hangout time with our kids. We don't know how to talk with them. We don't know how to play with them. We don't know how to get down to their level and just be. And so those are the kinds of things that probably you coach men. And when you coach men, when I work with dads, those are the things we talk about. Just how to be with them in the day to day.
Yeah.
How to affirm them. How to just do regular, normal things. How to go to the park. How to go to the library.
How to bake cookies. Make
Actually,
dinner.
we just did that. My two oldest were at a formal dance, and so my youngest and I went to the store, and he picked out the chocolate chips, and he read all the ingredients, and we bought everything and came home, and he made chocolate chip cookies for everybody.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah, it was wonderful.
Really, I mean, it's like, it's the quality of the time. It's
Yeah.
not the ski trip or whatever adventure. It's the quality
Right.
of the time.
Yeah.
Great. I'm so glad we're having this conversation. Before we
Me too.
go off, I've got one more thing I want to ask you, and it has to do with the role of moms, or the women in the lives of dads. Sometimes you hear women say, "I would love if my husband were closer with our kids," and sometimes it's I would love if my ex-spouse were closer with our kids. Sometimes that's genuine, and sometimes sometimes there's a game going on here where the woman feels that the kids can be used as a weapon, and their affection a weapon against dad or ex-spouse. So taking a positive view here, what would you say are, say 3 tips that you could give to women who are listening to this of how they could really and sincerely help and encourage the men in their lives to be better dads?
Yeah, I would say give you a couple right now, and
Okay.
then let you know that I'm actually doing a whole webinar on this at the end of the
Okay,
month
good.
on May.
Okay, give me
The
2.
first thing is to trust. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Give me 2 tips.
Okay, the first is to trust him with your children, to really trust him, to trust that they're going to be alive when they come home, whether you're divorced or married or separated. Many of us men feel inept and inadequate to be dads, and we need to know that the mother of our children actually trusts us to be a decent dad. When we feel criticized, when we feel like we're being watched over, where we're told what to do, we're being babysat ourselves, we move away from that. Affirmation is like a magnet for most of us men, because we're starved for it. Most of us don't get enough of that from our dads. And so when we feel that we're trusted, we want to move toward that. And so if you want your man to be spending more time with your children and investing more of himself in it, the more you can trust him to do that and express that trust to him, the more he'll rise up to it.
Okay. And the second one?
I'd say affirm him as a father. And even if some of that affirmation is more vision than it is present reality, because again, we move toward affirmation. When we feel we're getting a pat on the back or a compliment, it's one of the reasons why I think so many men spend more time at work than they probably should, and why so many women don't understand why men don't want to spend more time with their families. Because often in our families, we feel inadequate. We don't know what to do. Most of us men didn't grow up babysitting or caring for younger siblings. And I was 37 years old before I ever held a baby. Wow. I didn't know what to do. I had no idea how to change a baby, burp a baby, feed a baby. And if my wife criticized me for those things or not trusted me to do those things, I would have just gone to where I felt adequate, where I was trained, where I was educated, which is at work. And so if you want your man to be more at home, the third thing I'd say is to make home a place he wants to be. Partially by affirming him as a father, and partially by trusting him with your children. Those are the 3 things I'd say for now. I'm going to be expanding on those and adding a couple of more at the end of May, May 29th. I actually have a free webinar for moms about helping men become the husband and, excuse me, the father that you want him to be, and avoiding the mistakes you might not know you're making.
This is all such great information. Wow.
Oh, thanks, Annie.
I love it. You know, my son is about to become a dad for the first time in about
Oh,
6 weeks.
Fun.
And I'm sharing your book with him. Not that he had a bad dad. He has a wonderful dad.
I'm sure he does.
And I'm sure he will be a wonderful son. But your book is enlightening, and it's good for all of us to be reading. So before we sign off, Keith, can you give us a URL where people can learn more about your work?
Yeah, at my website is thegreatdadsproject.org, O-R-G. Dads is plural, thegreatdadsproject.org. And especially if you go to upcoming events, you'll see a couple of free webinars I have, one for moms and one for dads at the end of May and the beginning of June.
Excellent. Thank you so much for being with us and for the really great work you're doing.
Thank you, Annie.
I know it's needed. So
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you. I appreciate being here.
This is Annie Fox with Family Confidential. To learn more about my work with teens and parents, visit anniefox.com and check out my book, Teaching Kids to Be Good People, Progressive Parenting for the 21st Century. Available on Amazon, in print, and for Kindle. And please tune in next week for a new podcast when my guest will be Alden Mills, author of Be Unstoppable, the 8 Essential Actions to Be Successful in Anything. Until then, happy parenting!